So for those of you who might not know what this nightmarish garment is, it's a gym suit. And if you went to elementary school, middle school, or high school between the 1950s and even as late as the 1980s, and you were a girl, you were forced to wear this sartorial nightmare whenever you took gym. So I grew up in New Jersey, and I had to wear this outfit every time we took gym. But it's also the same outfit that I wore in my first foray in what turned out to be my life's work in social justice. I was in gym class one day, and I was being bullied terribly by two girls. They were relentless. And most of the time I took it, I really didn't worry about it. I kind of let it roll off my back. But this one particular day, I had just had enough. So I went to my gym teacher, and I said, I need to go use the restroom. And I left the classroom, I left the gym, and I marched down to the principal's office, and I went in and I said, I am being bullied every day by these two girls, and they're hurting other people too, and it's your responsibility to do something about it. Well, he looked at me and he said, young lady, I think you need to go back to class. And so I did. And as you might imagine, the principal had some feedback that he shared with my parents around the feedback that I shared with him regarding his performance. And when I got home, my West Indian, authority-respecting parents certainly had some feedback for me about my words with the principal. But another thing happened too. The principal started showing up in the classroom. He would stand at the back of the gym, and he would just have his arms crossed, and he would just stand there, and he would look. And he'd come day after day after day. And then gradually, the behavior of the teachers changed. They were far more cognizant of what was going on in the classroom and far more responsible for the way that the students behaved. And the bullies themselves, they realized that they were being watched, and so they also had countenance around their behavior too. And slowly but surely, things got better. And eventually, the principal came less and less, and that was okay. Because things got better for me, and they got better for all of the other students that were being bullied in that class. And on that particular day, when I really noticed that the change had happened, I could claim my first victory in social justice and advocacy. This is my life. This is what I intend to do. It is what I have done my entire career. I've known that I've wanted to be a lawyer since I was 7 years old, and at the age of 13, I found myself in the library all the time, reading voraciously, learning about the world, but specifically learning about people who made social justice their lives. So it was there that I learned about the work of Martin Luther King and Fannie Lou Hamer and Dolores Huerta and Che Guevara, people who had dedicated their entire lives to making sure that those who were powerless and those who were voiceless did not remain so on their watch. And I was fascinated by their singular vision of making sure that people had equality and dignity in their lives. And that resonated with me, and I wanted to do my own work in that space. And I knew that at 13. So for the last 22 years, this is what I have done. I've spent the first 10 years working as a child advocate and an attorney for the minor child. So I was always there for the voice of the children who are often not heard, particularly in high conflict custody cases and in child protection and delinquency work. I spent the next 10 years working and advocating for people with intellectual disabilities, a population that our country still struggles to understand and grossly underestimates and has a shameful history in really treating them terribly. And for the last 2.5 years, I've spent my entire working career, my entire last 2.5 years, working to make sure that people in this state have access to paid family and medical leave benefits so they are no longer making horrible draconian choices like leaving their children in the NICU while they go to work because they cannot afford to miss their shift, because we are better than that. So what often happens when I'm at cocktail parties or concerts or just gatherings, people often ask me, well, Andrea, what do you do? And I tell them what I do, and I tell them what I've done for as long as I've done it, and I always hear this. It never fails. I always hear, you're doing God's work. You're doing such wonderful work. I think it's amazing. You're changing the world. But what I hear most often is, I can never do what you do. But what I'm here today to tell you is that is simply not true. You can be a social justice advocate. You can have your own social justice victories. And today I'm going to tell you about 3 ways in which you can do that. These are those 3 ways. First, you can help children. The second is that you can find an opportunity immediately in your own community where you can make a change. And the third is if you really want to do this, you want to do one big thing in your lifetime that really changes the trajectory of a lot of people at once. And we're all capable of doing this, and I'll talk to you about how. So first, let's talk about helping children. Why do I say that you should help children? Children are the most vulnerable population in our country. They have no economic power. They have no political power. And they are subject to whatever socioeconomic circumstances they are born into and they live with. They simply just have to live with the circumstances in which they're in. They have no choice. And in this country, the NEEKC Foundation has found that 18% of children, 18%, that's 13 million children, live in poverty. And in our state, 38% of the children who live here in their families do not have enough money to meet the basic needs of education, food, clothing, shelter, or basic internet services, which is not for gaming. As we well know through the pandemic, it is actually for accessing education. And 38% of the families who live in this state don't have access to that. But one of the most insidious things about poverty happens in school, and that is lunch debt. So according to the School Nutrition Association, 75% of schools have some form of lunch debt that ranges anywhere from $20,000 to over $1 million, depending on the size of the school system. So that falls directly on children who may go to school during the day, and the time when that lunch bell rings or that tone sounds in the hallway and it's time for them to go to lunch, it is a terrorizing time for them if they come from a poor family, because they know they're going to walk into that cafeteria and not necessarily have an opportunity to eat. And we are better than this. There are children who have had their hands stamped, "You need lunch money." Children who have had their lunches rung up and thrown away in front of them, and children who are served food that is either dietarily or culturally inappropriate for them. And this happens every single day around the country. And if you don't think that you have lunch debt in your community, let me tell you, if you have a child going to school, no matter how affluent the community is that you live in, you have a child who's living in a poor place where they need help from you because they have a lunch debt. So this young man decided he would do something about it, and the way that he did is he started a GoFundMe. And with that, he's raising money in Washington State in order to eliminate lunch debt. This is a humiliating experience for children. And I've spoken to children, and I've represented children whose families have experienced this. We don't punish children in school, the one place where they should be safe, because their families are poor. And if you want to make a change today, you too can start your own GoFundMe. You can call your school system or any school system and ask them what the lunch debt is and ask the way that you can make a change and give that child dignity back in their classroom and in their cafeteria, and they don't have to go hungry and they don't have to be humiliated because they want something as simple as a meal during the day. The second thing that you can do is you can find an opportunity to solve a problem. This is a more immediate opportunity to solve a problem. So let me tell you about my friend, Pastor A.J. Johnson. He's from Hartford, and as he is tending to his flock in his church and his community, there is something that he noticed. He noticed that a lot of the children who live there, who are black and brown children, did not have positive male black role models. Their families were either their families were either affected by the disproportionate impact that the criminal justice system has on black and brown children, or their fathers were away for other reasons, but the black men in the community were not as present as he knew they could be, and he wanted to do something about it. So what he did is he put out a call in social media, and he asked for 100 black men to show up at an elementary school on the children's first day of school so that they could see that there are lots of black men in their community who care about them and want to be a role model for them. What happened was 400 black men showed up at 4 different elementary schools and high-fived these kids as they came in. So look at the joy on the faces of these babies as they're watching black men in suits and ties and first responder uniforms and cafeteria workers and whoever could show up that day. There were men who left their shift early so they could be there, so they could be present for these children. so they could see that there are people in their community who care about them, people who look like them, people they can aspire to. One day, one person, one call to action on social media, 400 people affected, and thousands of kids going to school in one day. Immediate problem in a community. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is that one big thing that I mentioned. So that's the third thing. And it really doesn't matter what it is. It just has to be big to you. So if your dream has always been you're going to write a letter to your congressperson, or you're going to go down to City Hall and have a discussion with the mayor, or you're going to run for town council or city council, that is your one big thing, and I'm asking you to do that in your lifetime. This is my friend Francine Austin, and I'm going to talk to you about her one big thing. Francine mentors so many kids that come out of the Hartford school system, and she noticed time after time that kids were not going into the sciences. They weren't taking math, they weren't majoring in biology, they weren't majoring in chemistry, they just weren't doing it. They were going to college, but they weren't majoring in what she called the hard stuff. So she asked them why. And they said to her, it's not that we don't want to do it, but we never see anybody who looks like us. I've gone to the doctor my whole life, some of the kids would tell her, and I've never seen anybody who looks like me, so I didn't even know it was possible. So I'm still going to go to college, but I'm going to major in something else because I don't know whether or not this is achievable. Well, if you know Francine, the answer to that was, oh no, that is not going to happen on my watch. So she spent months and months and months finding Black doctors across the state and planning what she eventually called Black Doctors Day, where she got 150 Black doctors to show up at Dunkin' Donuts Stadium, and they had all their white coats on, and they marched to the stadium, and there were 600 families that showed up with their children, with babies, with toddlers, with adolescents, with young adults, and they just kept streaming in and streaming in, and we knew we were in trouble when the fire marshal showed up. But then the fire marshal went in the back and got some coffee and just kind of said, okay, this is so important. It's so important. And she changed really the direction of so many children's lives on that one day. So here's another picture, just a few of the doctors that showed up, and there's Francine right there. You can see her. She's an amazing human being. And this is really what I'm talking about. This young woman, as you can see, beaming, holding up this t-shirt saying, today I saw a doctor that looks like me. So if you don't think the one big thing that you can do can make a difference, I hope you remember Francine when you're thinking about that. So when you think that you want to write that letter and it feels like you get that pit in your stomach like you can't do it, you certainly can, because you have Francine and you've got others like her who've done very similar things, and you can change someone's life. So then somebody asked me, well, you know what, Andrea, what is your one big thing? So here's what I decided to do. I decided to leave what my family called my perfectly good job that I had for 10 years, to go and start a brand new state agency, the Connecticut Paid Family and Medical Leave Insurance Authority, which we just call Connecticut Paid Leave, in the middle of a pandemic, because March 2020 is a great time really to start anything. It really is. And so I had just a few people, but I had a huge vision, and here's why. Because of all of the times that I've worked, all the children I represented, all of the people that I've met, what I saw time and time again were people making incredibly draconian decisions about their lives, whether they were going to go to work or they were going to be in the NICU with their very sick child, whether they were going to skip their shift and miss the money, or whether they were going to be with their loved one who was being diagnosed with a serious illness, whether they were giving up an opportunity to go to the doctor to attend to their own serious health condition, putting off serious health conditions of their own and getting attention because they couldn't afford to be without a paycheck. These are not choices that we should be making. The United States and Papua New Guinea are the only nations that are industrialized that do not have a national paid family and medical leave program. But in this state, I wanted to make a difference. And I always said, if I had a chance to affect 1,000 people, 10,000 people, 1,000,000 people, and when that opportunity showed up, I was going to grab it. Even if it wasn't a pandemic, I was going to do it. And so I did. So as I stand here today, here's what I can tell you, that over 25,000 people have been able to take paid family and medical leave, and we've paid over $80 million in benefits, so that moms don't have to go back to work after 2 weeks after birth, which is what people were doing. This is insane. We don't need to live like this. And I'm really proud that I was able to make that difference, because you can. Your one big thing doesn't have to be mine, but I know that it is in each and every one of you. So if you go onto my Facebook page, you'll see this. This is how I describe myself, as a mom and a life partner and a friend. And I call myself a quiet warrior for justice, but maybe not anymore since I'm on the stage. It's not so quiet, but that's okay. I don't always feel like I have to let everyone know what I've done and everything that I've done. I do this work because it is my passion, because I've known since I was 7 that I put on this earth to make a difference. I know that. And I believe that each and every one of you can do the same thing. You can do the 3 things that I've asked you to do, which is to help a child or children. Or you can find something where you can make an immediate impact in your community. Or you can do that one big thing, whether it's, I've always wanted to go to a rally, and some people just go to the rally and they just stand there. Or they hold a sign saying, this is the first time I'm at a rally. It doesn't really matter. But what matters is our communities need us. Our state needs us. Our nation needs us. And when we know that the state that we're in, and we see the turmoil that we're facing with racism and sexism and violence, and we feel overwhelmed, it can feel like there is nothing you can do. But today, I'm telling you that you can. And I'm urging you to take what I'm saying to you and move forward and do one thing, just one thing, when you leave here or sometime in the future, where you know that you've shifted the trajectory of someone's life, because it is totally possible every single day. And how do I know this? Because if an elementary school student in this horrifying outfit can make a difference, I know you can too. Thank you.